So the female custodies scandal isn't going away. In fact, it's getting worse. And here was me thinking that I had sorted it all out last time. Oops. Because this whole thing has evolved and escalated massively. The scope has hugely increased. And now there are leaks from Amazon about female space marines being forcibly inserted into Warhammer. Blacklists are being handed out, letters are being furiously written, and even Henry Cavill has been caught up in all of this. Yeah, it's a lot. But to catch you up, this all started with the new Codex for the Adeptus Custodes, or as some people like to call them,
Adeptus Custodes, Adeptus Custodes.
These are a faction in Warhammer 40k, and in the recent Codex, for the first time ever, it explicitly contains stories about both male and female custodes. And when it was asked of Games Workshop whether or not, there are now both men and women in the custodes, Games Workshop said yes, and that women have always been members. I guess we had just never seen them before. Now, this was a retcon. In the past, Adeptus Custodes were always depicted as men only, though it was never really explicit that women weren't welcome. I talked about all of this in my last video and went into way more detail. But suffice to say, many people are viewing this new update to the Custodes as a big problem, and there has been a huge amount of drama surrounding the topic, especially on YouTube, as the topic was covered by some really big political YouTubers, and some YouTubers who pretend they're not political, but they definitely are. Now, I covered why I don't think this is as much of a big deal as they're making out last time, but since then, things have gotten worse. For one, my opinion that female custodes doesn't bother me at all has earned me a spot on a blacklist of YouTubers, alongside other greats like Dana Hoyle, Bricky, Goobertown, and more, as if we were all engaged in a Bolshevik conspiracy to put the Communist Party USA into the White House and also happen to live in the McCarthy era. My name is down on this blacklist as somewhat woke. I don't know what that means. I just want cheaper miniatures, thanks. Also, I'm not a racist. But hey, I'm European, so I guess all my opinions are too socialist for American audiences. Sorry. And for extra McCarthy-era nostalgia, Jay from Eons of Battle is down on this list as openly gay, as if this was a bad thing and should be noted. Yeah, that's pretty telling about the author of this letter, isn't it? McCarthy was gay, by the way. How's that for forced inclusivity? Also, I love that Major Kill is down here as probably woke, because he includes women in his Warhammer porn. Presumably, the author of this list would have preferred all males custodes porn.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Sorry, is it too woke for me to say that's okay? Yeah, this is a real list, by the way, actively being passed around right now. Pretty sus. By the way, I never claimed that people who are into 40k lore aren't real fans, as this blacklist declares. I think this comes from my last video where I said that people who talk about the sanctity of the lore in Warhammer are casual fans, but I wasn't referring to general Warhammer fans with that statement. You know, the ones who read a book or enjoy the lore. I was specifically referring to certain YouTubers out there who are using this whole female custodes scandal as a launch pad to insert their political opinions into the Warhammer community as if they're hardcore experts on the franchise, when in reality, they're pretty casual observers of the whole thing. You know, people who have never been involved in Warhammer or wargaming before, who have maybe read a single wiki article and now they're declaring that they're fighting for the soul of Warhammer, but also getting the very basics of the setting wrong. People like...
One of the most iconic symbols of the 40k universe has got to be the Space Marines, genetically and surgically enhanced super soldiers wrapped up in power armor that are deployed to the most critical war zones across the galaxy. They're the very apex of human warfare, and the elite amongst them are the custodes.
And there's tons and tons of examples of this. Too many to note. So yeah, that's what I meant. You know, if you enjoy the books, obviously you can be a fan of Warhammer. If you're someone who cares about consistency and tone in the Warhammer lore, I wasn't talking about you. People who read Warhammer books qualify as Warhammer fans. I think that goes without saying. So, you know, please stop throwing bricks through my window, thanks. And also, I'd like not to be put on the bus to the internment camps. But blacklists aside, that's not even the juicy part of this whole scandal. That was just a little taster. That was a starter. Because the rage against female custodes has evolved as the truth of why they were even included in the most recent codex in the first place has now been leaked. And this has fueled even more outrage, even more speculation, because As it has been reported, the true villain of this story is Amazon. That's right, the massive conglomerate that are behind everything from union busting to bottle pissing. It was them that forced female custodies into Warhammer. But even worse, originally Amazon wanted the dreaded female space marines to become canon. That's right, this has all gotten even crazier. And this is all because of Amazon and Games Workshop working together on the new upcoming Warhammer cinematic universe, the one that is being helmed by Henry Cavill. It turns out that Amazon originally wanted a female space marine in the new Warhammer Amazon show, but Games Workshop pushed back on this for fears that their names would also end up on a blacklist. I mean, who wants to show up beside Discourse Minis, am I right? So instead, Games Workshop conceded by including females custodies as a little bit of a woke compromise. You know, not fully awake, just slightly groggy, you need a coffee, that kind of woke. And reportedly, Henry Cavill is now very upset about all of this, what with custodies being his favorite army and him notoriously not liking women. And as a result, Henry Cavill might even walk away from his role in the Warhammer cinematic universe. These, of course, are all massive claims, so obviously you'll expect some massive evidence. That's it. That's the evidence. Hearsay and conjecture.
Those are kinds of evidence.
This is literally just a rumor being spread around by big YouTubers, some who have claimed to know insiders at Amazon. But beyond that, there's nothing of substance, except, you know, the fitting of a certain narrative, because it's just the latest rumor in a long list of supposed leaks about this topic, many of which are extremely dubious to say the least. Last week, we had pretty much the exact same claim being spread, a claim that originated with a 4chan post from an anonymous person who claimed that Amazon desperately wanted a female in power armor in their new show and were determined to get it no matter the cost. This was a 4chan post that was taken very seriously by a whole bunch of the same YouTubers for some reason. Personally, I'm very skeptical of this claim. Firstly, because anyone could have written this on the internet. People have been known to lie on the internet. It's unfortunate, but true, especially while anonymous. And secondly, because the original post that is the origin of this rumor happened to also end with the text, "Trust me, my dad works at Nintendo," which to me proves that this post is a little bit of a trap to see who would believe it. A little bit of a joke on certain people's gullibility. Personally, while I could see Amazon wanting flexibility with the casting of the Warhammer IP for a new Amazon show, I just don't see Amazon pushing anything into the actual codex of the actual Warhammer war game. And we already know that the lore writers working for Games Workshop have been wanting to write about female custodies since at least 2019, as I discussed in my last video. And I even happen to present actual proof. Seriously, it's from a real account and everything. So even if Amazon did push for lady custodies in the new codex, they wouldn't have had to push very hard at all. I think that some people like this Amazon theory because it lets Games Workshop off the hook and takes the heat off of them and puts it onto Amazon instead. So I think it's important that we keep in mind that for all intents and purposes, it appears that Games Workshop want this lore change, that they are fine with the idea of lady custodies. However, I also doubt that they foresaw it being quite so controversial as it has turned out to be, because this whole female custodies thing has been a massive story that just keeps growing and has even led to actual calls of a boycott of Warhammer itself. And I've been speaking with lots of people who are intending on boycotting Warhammer. The only thing is that when I've spoken to some of these people and they have told me that they're boycotting Games Workshop, I've asked them, what game are they going to play instead of Warhammer? And they've done the equivalent of quirking a brow at me and saying, game? Because the anger at Games Workshop, at least from my personal perspective, seems to be originating from people who primarily enjoy the lore of Warhammer, but don't necessarily play the war game, or any war game really, and as a result, any boycott from that population is going to have very limited impact on the actual finances of Games Workshop. Because if the boycotters are just interested in Warhammer, not wargaming, just Warhammer, then I mean, there's no alternative to Warhammer to move on to. Warhammer is sort of the only Warhammer around to Warhammer with, and boycotting books won't really do much because book sales are incidental to Games Workshop. They're just part of a pipeline designed to get people into the more lucrative miniature sales. And Games Workshop just don't make any money from lore videos, so not watching those isn't going to do anything. And honestly, if the plan is just to stop reading Wikipedia articles, I mean, I think the Games Workshop would take down those wiki articles if they could. The one place I think would have an impact on Games Workshop would be unsubscribing from Warhammer Plus, but that will probably only have an impact in so much as it will hasten the end of that entire program by about a month, because it's probably not going to last too much longer anyway. So while calls for Warhammer boycotts are fine and all, I just don't know what people are functionally going to boycott if they don't play the actual Warhammer 40k game. I guess they'll just boycott the idea of Warhammer, and if that is the plan, then I think the Games Workshop have already won. It's like boycotting Star Wars, you know, you're into it or you're not. There's no real middle ground. I suppose there is one middle ground. You could just think it's meh, not enjoyed any of the new stuff except Rogue One and Andor, but still play Star Wars Legion because it is a bloody good game mechanically, like me. Seriously though, what the f happened to Star Wars? Meanwhile though, sales of Warhammer don't seem to be affected by any of this scandal. Everything is still selling out, though that's partly to do with the fact that Games Workshop absolutely suck at keeping anything in stock. I mean, believe me, I'd love for a mass of wargamers to try other games in the broader wargame hobby. Like seriously, I kind of call for this all the f***ing time in every single one of my videos. But no one is really suggesting that right now. They're just suggesting that everyone should go to war for the soul of Warhammer. But that's a war that can't really be won and doesn't really make any sense to me personally, because what is the win condition? Retconning the retcon? I mean, sure, you can build your own Warhammer with blackjack and hookers. I've always advocated for that, especially the hookers. But while this has all been going on, the Fallout Wasteland Warfare miniature skirmish game has sold really, really well, more than double the normal sales. And that's not because of people falling away from Warhammer, that's because of the new Amazon show. Because the Fallout RPG from Modiphius has also sold out totally, and the Fallout Factions, the new Modiphius Fallout skirmish game, has also had a ton of interest. And all of this can be laid at the foot of Amazon. The Amazon Prime Fallout show has had a massive impact with mainstream audiences because it was actually kind of good, and that has resulted in great sales for Fallout products, even really niche ones like a miniature war game, because people will actually play miniature war games. This is a really cool hobby and I love it. More people should love it and they should know that it exists. God! And I suspect that the same thing will happen if the Warhammer Amazon show comes out and is shown to mainstream audiences. Just like Fallout, it's going to result in massive miniature sales for Warhammer. I mean, female custodies or not, Primaris Space Marines or not, Necron changes or not, yeah. And Games Workshop know that, and so I think even if this rumor of Amazon being behind the female custodies retcon is true, I don't think the Games Workshop are going to feel particularly aggrieved after they make a whole boatload of money. You know, unless the show sucks, in which case it will totally bomb and no one outside the Warhammer community will ever talk about it again. I mean, it's not like Rings of Power brought many people into the Middle-earth wargame after all. More's the pity though, because that is the best wargame that Games Workshop do. But hey, I say, buy 3D printers if you want. I support that. Support other companies like Battletech by Catalyst, Conquest by Parabellum, Infinity from Chorus Belly, Malifaux from Weird Games, Relic Blade from Metal King Studio. There are a lot of war games out there, all great replacements for Warhammer if you're looking for one, many of them with fantastic lore, excellent world building, and great miniatures. I mean, Warhammer isn't unique. It's not unique. There are plenty of great sci-fi settings out there, and fantasy and more. But even still, I don't think we're going to see much take up of other games from people who are calling for a boycott of Warhammer in this instance. More likely, it'll just be more 3D printed Space Marines and perhaps some games of Prohammer or even Horus Heresy, because lots of people are moving over to Horus Heresy, as if Games Workshop don't make money on that one either. But still, they're invested in the Warhammer IP. And as a result of all this, I don't think that Games Workshop are particularly worried. I think for them to actually worry, it would have to be the core demographic of wargamers who buy all the Warhammer 40k models to boycott the company. And to be frank, in most of the gaming spaces that I've seen, the ones that I've been in, there just doesn't seem to be any appetite for a boycott at all. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. Most of the fan spaces I've seen are either neutral or in favor of female custodies. But, you know, if you do want to hear about a different, very cool war game, check out my Patreon, where I recently produced a whole entire review of Malifaux, a video that has recently been called the best video ever made. Sources, my dad who works at Nintendo, and I even review war games and RPGs in Patreon bonus videos every single month, so, you know, check it out. Daggerheart is next month, and I have quite a library of reviews for anyone joining today. Plus, you get live streams, access to an entire horror war game, and as always, thanks to my patrons, especially CryptoKev, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye-bye.